In the last video, we set up pagination over here. You can see I can click to the next page, and then I get this nice little next and previous button if I have a next or previous page visible. We did all of that with a pagination function we get in get static props. Now what I want to do is come over here to the blog page. And at the base of the page, I want to actually output a kind of a cloud tag right over here. Now the first thing I'm going to do is actually change this back to like a page size of 3, so I get 3 per page because, 1 per page is a lot of clicking. All right, so here we go. At the bottom right down here is where I want that. So what I'm going to do is actually start by doing all the data, the fetching and all the stuff I need in the component. So we're going to call this like category cloud or something like that, .astro. Now just a quick note, I mentioned earlier that both the author and the category actually don't have anything at their index route. So if I come over here and say category like this, there's nothing here. Same thing if I say author, there's nothing here. So we could do something very similar to what we're about to do and add an index.astro page underneath each of these. Let's see, author and category. If you're interested in that, I will let you figure that out on your own because I'm going to show you how to do it here, and it's pretty much the same idea. So the very first thing I'm going to do is actually jump over here and grab all this because we're going to need a lot of similar things. So inside here, I need all posts and I need my formatted posts. Now to start with, I need to come out of the components folder. I need to go into the pages folder, into the blog, and then grab any markdown files in there. You can see as well that I don't have my format blog post function here, so let me go ahead and import that. So I'll import format blog posts. I'll come up to JS, and then I'll grab my utils. So what I want to do is take all of my posts that I'm allowed to see, in this case, anything that's not future, that's not a draft, and it will all be sorted, which doesn't really matter for this use case. But what I want to do is take all categories here, and I'll pull this from my formatted posts. So formatted posts, and I want to map over these. Now in this case, I don't actually want to set because I may want to count up how many I have. So we'll call this something like cat, and I'll just return cat.frontmatter.category. Now in this case, I actually want to lowercase them because I want to make sure I'm comparing like to like. Every other time we've used these categories, they are slugified, so they're already lowercased. Here, I don't want to have two different tags, one with like a capitalized CSS and one with a lowercase CSS. So just to make sure they're all the same and I'm not having like similar typed tags that are just different cases showing up, I'm going to make sure I lowercase them. And then finally, just to be safe, although I think they're already flattened, I'm going to just flatten it just to double check. So let's go ahead and console.log all categories. And then I'm going to go ahead and import this in my pages directory. Now the way I've set this up, it's actually below the section and it's in an aside tag. This is kind of aside data, so I figured that was appropriate. I'll come up here, I'm going to add a class to this of container, and then I'll add an ARIA label. You could also do labeled by and point it to the H2's ID, but in this case, I'll just call it blog categories. That's actually the same thing I'm going to use for my H2 in here. This will be with a class of H3. I'll call it blog categories and close out that tag. Now finally, I'm going to import the category cloud. And then I'm going to go ahead and just copy this down right here and change both of these to category cloud. So if I save this and I jump back over this way, down below I should see blog categories, but I have yet to show any clouds. However, you might remember that I did go ahead and I console logged it, and you'll see I got reference docs, CSS, Astro General, and reference docs. So I've got 2 reference docs, everything else should be the same. So let me come back up this way. Now what I want to do is process those categories, and I want to count up how many of each of those exist. Now if you're going to reduce everything down to a single number, you should use the reduce method. So that's what we're going to do here. So processed categories, or we'll just call it process cats. How about that? We'll say all categories. So all the categories I get, that should be that array we just looked at. I want to reduce this. So reduce, I've got my accumulator and I've got my category. And I want to accumulate this all. And I think in this case, I'm just going to do it in an object because I think it'll be a little bit easier to list through the keys and the values. You could also do it in an array if you prefer that. But I'm just going to first of all check if the category exists in the ACC. So I'm going to say const value equals ACC, and I'm going to look on that object and say, hey, does this property exist of, what do I call it, category? So I'm getting that from this loop right now. Does the current loop exist? So that might be reference docs, it might be CSS, whatever that happens to be. If it doesn't, then go ahead and just pass back 0. Then below here, I just want to return from this reduce an object with a current ACC, which might be an empty object the first time through, obviously, and then after that it could be something else. and I just want to pick out that property. So whatever the category happens to be named, like CSS or whatever, and I want to take the current value and I want to add 1 to it. And I'm just going to pass that on to the next loop. So the very first time it goes through, it's going to look at the first item in the array, which I think was reference docs, and it's going to start with an empty object right here, and it's going to say, hey, is there anything with reference docs as a property in the empty object? Well, obviously there's not, so the value is going to be 0 to start with. It's going to spread in the empty object, and then it's going to add this if it doesn't already exist, which it doesn't. So it'll be reference docs, and then the value plus 1. So in this case, 0 plus 1. So now it'll be at 1. Let me show you what the end result would be then. So console.log processed cats. And if I open this up, you'll see what I get is an object with the name of the category as the key and the number as the value, or the number of times it's been used in all of my posts. Now there's one other thing I want to think about, which is sometimes I want it to actually display that number, which is why we did all that work just there. So we're going to write show count right here. We'll take this in as astro.props. Down here, we've just got a little bit of templating to do. So I've got a UL here with a class of categories, and I'll go ahead and close that one off. And then inside here, we're going to loop over our data. Now you might remember it's an object, so I have to do object.entries in this case because I want both the keys and the values. That would be my process cats. And now that I've got an array, I can map over them. To make it a little bit easier, I can actually destructure those if I want to into a key and a val. That would be the key over here and the value over here, whatever that happens to be. And then I can just return inside here an li, and this will have an anchor tag inside of here with a class of badge and a key, which would be the name of the tag inside of it. Now this needs to actually point somewhere, so let's point it to an href here, and we're going to actually use template string inside of here, so let's put it inside of curly braces, and we'll say / category, and then finally we are going to go ahead and slugify the key itself, because remember that's how we set up those routes. And then I'll add a final slash at the end. I don't remember, did we pull in slugify up top here? No, we did not. So let's go ahead and pull that in, slugify. I'll come down below here. And let's see, I think I closed off this parenthesis right here a little too early. This should go down here, there we go. All right, so if I come down here, I should get a list of all my blog categories, and I do, cool. Now there is actually another possibility, and that is that I would want to show the number afterwards. So let me come back over to my page. We'll come back down this way. And here I need to do two things. In the category cloud itself, I need to say show count, and this needs to point to true, because in this case I do want to show the count. And then finally, just for styling, I realized that I capitalized this, and that should not be capitalized. There we go. Now it actually styles correctly. Again, I use some of these ARIA labels for the styling, which I know makes the CSS very fragile, but I wanted to focus on Astro and not on CSS. Finally, let's come back over this way, and right next to the actual output of the key, I want to add another little template option, and that would be if show count is true, so I can just do it like that. Let's use it logical and. I just want to add a template string, and I want it to actually be inside of parentheses, so that's why I need it to be a template string, and I can just add the value like that. So you can see down below now, I have 2 and 1 and 1 and 1, so I know exactly how many are there. And if I click on these, they should show me those two posts, and it should be the same. So there's 1, there's 1, there's a general. Okay, so it's the exact number I would expect. Now you can use something very similar to this to actually set up your own like page list at the category root itself. So right here, you could set it up to where the same kind of thing shows right here. It would just show all the categories in a list, and you would use the same kind of thing here. You could do the same thing with authors. That would work the exact same way. Now, before we start turning our attention to like the sitemap and creating an RSS feed and some other things like that, I want to do one other kind of nice thing to have, and that is on each individual post, if I come inside here, sometimes it's nice to actually have a sidebar that will show those categories as well. So let's go ahead and use that same component in the sidebar. So I'm going to close this down because we don't need that anymore. I'm going to close that down as well. Now, where are all these markdown files getting their layout from? Well, they're getting it from in layouts, and it's blog post layout. Now, I already set up this sidebar, but we have yet to put anything in it, so let's go ahead and do that now. Actually, to save us some time, let's go ahead and open back up this page, and I'm actually going to copy all of this right here, and let's just add it directly in here. All of that looks great to me. I just also need to come in here and grab that component. So let's grab this right here, and we called that category cloud. So if I save that there, you'll see the same thing comes in. Except in this case, I don't really want to show the count on these individual pages, so let's just remove that. And that way we got this that just shows all blog categories available to me. The other page itself, the actual blog page, would show how many I have in each category. Now, while we're here, I want to add one more thing to the sidebar over here, and we're going to do that in the next video. That would be to display related posts. Now, in this case, they're just going to be posts with the same category, but if you also had tags, you could also loop through those and then basically randomize the posts and show 2 or 3 from the top of those. So let's just do it with our categories, and I'll let you figure it out if you want to add tags or authors or other things like that, or maybe the same year it was posted. All of that's available here in Astro. So let's do that in the next video.